Hello, and welcome to Hope for Felons podcast, where we discuss felons and everything in between. Your host for this show is Douglas Van Vliet. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, and welcome back to Hope for Felons Incorporated, where we discuss felons and everything in between. Today we have a guest on the show, Miss Denise Linton, and she was my instructor in college, and I felt that it would be good to have her on the show. I have learned so much, and I know you will as well. So without further ado, I would love to turn it over to Miss Linton because she does have a whole lot to cover. So Miss Linton, go right on ahead.
You are no longer on parole. You can vote now. And it really takes becoming involved in your community. That's one of the steps of, not going back to that and not giving up, but becoming engaged in the community. Don't just write it off. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, I'm just one person. I can't do this. Well, Rosa Parks was just one person, and look what she started. And so, coming together is a big thing. There are things that can be done. We're making changes. I worked in between leaving my 30-year career working in the human services field and then going into teaching. During that transition, I was working for a convenience store. I was manager. I knew the owner. And he had that box, so check the box if they're, and he's like, oh, if they're a convicted felon. And I was like, I gotta be honest with you. I'd much rather hire somebody who has served their time and come out than I would some of these 20-year-olds that you want me to hire. Mm-hmm. And he would ask me why, and I said, let me tell you, they have learned to follow instructions, be there on time, know where they're supposed to be. There's that structure that took place. And they want it more than these 20-year-olds. And so he did start letting me hire people who had a criminal background. And he found that they were some of the best employees. But it's going to take some time to change that mind. Some other things is not only getting involved in some of the community programs. The more ties that you have with the community, the more that you are linked to the community, you're going to have what's called a private safety net. You're going to have support and not feeling alone. And this, religious backgrounds and churches and worship services, these are a great place to start, but I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about organizations, volunteering at the homeless shelters or the soup kitchens, just getting involved. Don't let this label define you, because it should not. And I think the biggest, becoming involved, get into voting. There's what's called voter suppression. The people in power want those, from the groups that are not within the higher, wealthier powers. They don't want them to vote. That means that they're going to, there's that chance that legislation is going to have to change. And so they will try to do things to keep people from voting.
Now, then coming out of prison, one of the biggest things that I know a lot of people ask about is relationships and about, like the baby's mama may not be as supportive as what they feel like they should, or a situation like that, we all know that a relationship ain't just between, a man and a woman. It could be mother and father as well. And I think, right, a lot of them really struggle with that.
I think, for me, coming from my point of view, I think it's having this expectation coming out. Oh, we've got to go back to the way it was, or there should be more. And I think, kind of stepping back from the expectation a little bit, and not putting it so high, and understanding. I mean, it stinks. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, coming into back into, there's so many changes that you have to get used to. It's not as structured. But I think the expectations with the relationships, you know, kind of stepping back and saying, okay, here's what I would like for it to be, but I need to take it one step at a time. If that makes sense, it's not about, well, we've got to go right back to the way it was before.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And you can't do that. And I think, and this is where that other personal safety net comes in, finding groups. And if there were issues with drug or alcohol, there's some great support groups there, but there's other programs. I know some churches have what's called Celebrate Recovery. And it's not just about alcohol or drugs. It's anything that you're struggling with and giving you that support group. And I think getting that support. You can't do this on your own. And it may not come from the people that you were hoping for. But that is a tough one, and I understand because you've been locked away, and then now you're like, I just want everything to go back to normal. It's going to be a new normal. I am a widow, and when I lost my husband, I didn't change. I mean, I kind of changed, but I had to get used to a new normal. It wasn't the way it was before. The relationships weren't the same. And so it's just realizing it's going to be a new normal. It's just going to take some time.
I know and a lot of people have really talked about that. And also, I'm glad you brought up the thing of the ban the box because we really have an issue with a lot of employers around here. Now, one thing that they did have, I think it was a couple months ago, they, for the first time they ever done this, but they had a job fair for felons in certain county, and I thought, oh my goodness, was they supposed to do this? Because you know how, I mean, certain county's always been not so good for offenders in rehabilitation. It never has been. But I was really curious when I found that out. That they're actually trying to make a step because before, I mean, they're going to come out regardless. There's nothing we can do about it. Once these people serve their time, they're coming out and they need the help. So why not try to give them the help to try to lower, the risk of recidivism? But I don't understand it a lot of times because they act like it's just about money.
Yeah, it's definitely not about money. It's, it goes back to this stigma, this idea in labeling. When I worked with youth, adolescents, and from 2001 until 2014, I worked with some of the most aggressive kids that there were mental health issues and there was trauma in their lives. And they were being suspended and kicked out of school. And so I created a day treatment program, a program to work with students. And it was, we covered schoolwork, we covered mental health and therapy and all that. And, we saw great progress. And then when I went back to the schools and said, all right, Johnny is ready. He has been doing so great. He hasn't had any behaviors that would lead to like a school suspension. We didn't suspend, but and they're ready. And I would get this response of, "Oh, I didn't think we were getting that kid back." And there's this idea of the labeling, and we do that too with people who have been convicted of crimes and served their time. And if we would just kind of have more conversations and understand that on some of the charges and things like that, it doesn't mean that they're going to do it again.
I agree. I do agree. Especially, I had a guy contact me last week. It was the same day that I got under surgery. I think I might have been under surgery maybe 2 hours. And the phone rings and like, they needed help. But he was in Virginia, but whatever his charge was, he ended up becoming a registered sex offender. And he claimed, well, I didn't do it. And I said, I don't get into none of that. I mean, I really don't. But the problem is he's having issues, not trying to find work because he's like 7 years old. And they won't let him return back to his house because supposedly whoever the victim was lives within a half a mile of his residence. And I was like, I've never heard of nothing like that because he said he don't even know where the person lives, who the person, if he was to see him on the street, he said he'd never know who it was. That's sad there.
Well, and the other thing with sex offenders, now we do put sex offenders, and I do go over that in my intro class. We talk about it. And I ask them, give me an image. When I say sex offender, they always say an old creepy white man. And I was like, well, did you guys know that you can be charged as a sex offender if you pee in public near any like 200 yards or 200 feet or something from an elementary school or middle school? And there's no level for sex offenders. And so we come up with these images. And yes, sexual predators who do prey on children, that's not what I'm talking about. But, I had a gentleman who I did try. And this is the problem with online dating now too. So this is just a word of warning. I mean, we have our culture of the hookup culture. And I understand that, but, I'm almost like, hey, I need to see some ID before we're hooking up. I know that's not what we do, but he literally, and I read over his arrest record, trying to get him a job. He met somebody online. They swore up and down that they were 18. And people can look a whole lot older than what they really are.
Mm-hmm.
And they got into a relationship. The family found out, and the person turned out to be 16. And you don't think about going, hey, I need to see your driver's license before we go any further. But and so now he's charged. And he admitted, we've had sexual, but they told me, and they're like, well, that's your responsibility because you're 21 years old. And so he has been charged as a sex offender. And, I had known him for about 2 years. He was working as a newspaper delivery guy into my store. And so I tried, and it was the insurance company who said, absolutely not. You cannot hire anybody who's registered as a sex offender. It doesn't matter. And so even though I've got the owner close to agreeing, the insurance company said absolutely not. And so there's no levels like misdemeanors and felonies. Felonies, you have class 1, 2, 3, misdemeanors, and there's different levels in severity, but sex offenders, there's not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, Mr. Linton, I'm not going to take much of your time, but I really thank you for being on the show. We usually do normally about 30 minutes, but it took me a little bit longer this time to get everything up and running because the program that I used to use, I don't use it anymore. So, and then they want to charge us an arm and a leg for a lot of these services. This is the only one that I could find that was halfway inexpensive. So, we really appreciate you coming on, and don't make yourself scarce. If you have a chance next month that want to, let me know.
All right, well, hey, and just as I leave, you know what, there's a lot of people that are supporting you. There are a lot of people that don't follow this, so don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is to keep going and don't give up. That's the biggest thing. I think if more people would learn that, then it would be a lot easier and they won't see themselves, easier to reoffend because when they give up, it seems like that's it. Then they end up reoffending again. And that's one thing, like Miss Lindsay said, the best thing is your support group. Your support group will be there to help you. So it's good to have that safety net in case something happens or just to be there for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me, and yeah, maybe next month I'll be able to do this again. This was fun.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you later.
All right.
Bye.